That was Zach Rowden with "You Can't Close Your Ears." This is the beginning of "You Can't Close Your Ears," um, and you're listening to Northern Remedy, the show dedicated to New Haven's music, past, present, and future, here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Brian Slattery. I'm the arts editor of New Haven Independent, and with me here in the studio is Zach Rowden himself. Hey, Zach.
Hey, Brian.
Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the biggest reason that reasons that I wanted to have you come in are there are two things, which is that first of all, since arriving in town, you play a lot and have become a staple of the New Haven music scene, and also that you organize a lot of shows.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about both of those things. But let's talk about the music part first. So tell us about what we just heard.
So that was an upright bass.
Yeah.
To start off simply. But that was off of a tape I put out in January on a label called Ex Cathedral from out of Stockholm.
Cool.
I did a tour on it and whatever, but those two tracks on that tape, it's just two long slabs of things, or I think kind of the most updated solo bass thing I've done. Because how I started even playing the bass in this kind of context outside of school was I started playing alone because I didn't have anybody to play with.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So, and that's usually like everyone's like biggest fear. Like, oh my God, I have to play solo, So it's kind of like my forever, this giant block I'm constantly chipping away at.
Yeah,
and I'm always thinking about the next solo thing and try to shape this thing. But I think like that track, I ran a recording that I made through it, like no input mixer. So
Nice.
it's just like a gross high pass filter and it sound like trash, But that's, it's kind of like, that's how it sounds live. I play through like gross PAs and bad amps and stuff because it's about making the bass and drone music kind of evil again. That's the goal, because everyone like you hear drone, you're like, I've gotten a lot of like, oh, like
yoga.
You like new age music. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I'm totally down with like Laraji and super chilled out, whatever. But I've found a lacking of drone music that with real intensity, especially made from an instrumental music background.
Right.
A lot of synth people can make scary drone stuff, but
yes,
you don't see people playing acoustic instruments and actually taking, aesthetics from harsh noise and doom metal and stuff and like just intonation or, historical tuning kind of stuff and putting it together. So that's kind of where I have kind of found this corner and was kind of surprised nobody else was here. Like, you look around, you're like, I guess I've been doing this for a couple of years and I haven't really, I like the same thing is a problem with tongue depressor. It's a great problem, but we've kind of looked around and been like, where are the other people?
Yeah, right, right.
Somebody should have or probably has thought of this. That's what I always think. Like, there's so many musicians, the internet, all of these things, So yeah, that's kind of been my recent realization of like, not a lot of people just make scary drone music, and that's awesome,
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of, I was really, really happy with how that tape came out, the solo tape, and they're all gone. It's small batch.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to either get more or put another one out.
So let's take a big step back. When did you first start playing music?
Oh, it's a complicated. The full spark noted story would be I grew up in Long Island and then moved to Virginia in middle school. My mother, being the great mother that she is, was like, all of my children will play an instrument. Whether you like it or not, just do it. It'll, enhance your life in some way.
Right.
I have two older sisters. My middle sister started playing the cello. So then I was like, okay, I'll play the cello. I moved to Virginia. They're like, yo, we have 25 cellos in our orchestra class. You started 2 years before, which didn't mean anything. I was so bad. You could jump to the 7th grade class or you could stay in the 6th grade class. But if you're going to stay, you should play the bass. So I was like, I'm the new guy. Like, I don't want to make anybody angry. Like, showing up, you're better than people, which I wasn't.
Right.
So I was like, fine, I'll play the bass. And then I basically faked my way through middle school and high school orchestra because you're playing an instrument that nobody cares about, and your parts are super easy, but no one can hear you because you don't actually have to project and blah 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 blah. So I really don't count playing music until I got to college.
Yeah.
I didn't take my first private lesson until May, going into my senior year of high school.
Oh wow.
Solely to get into music school, which I was going originally as a music therapy major. And that's the only reason.
Interesting.
And that's the only reason why I got in. And that's like, to me, that's like the whole focal point of like, even if I have a long-standing career in music or not, that decision to be even interested in music therapy, because I'm really interested in psychology and the effects of music and blah 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 blah.
Right.
So I was like, oh yeah, music therapy. I could do this as a job. Like I tell my friends what records to listen to. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of like thinking about it that way. And then like the one anecdote from music therapy school that I could even give you, because I only lasted about 3 days. I showed up. So I got in to this conservatory, and I was
where did you go?
Shenandoah Conservatory in Winchester, Virginia.
Yeah, nice.
I grew up in Richmond, so it was like, and I also didn't know what I was doing playing music. Like I grew up listening to punk and hardcore and noise and stuff. Like I've been buying. I was a fan before a performer.
Yeah,
100%. That's why I still go to shows.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't think that seems pretty typical. Also, that like people play because they like hearing things.
You would think music school made me think differently about that.
Did you?
But
this
anyway,
is what I get for just being like out in the wilds.
Oh well, the wild is so much easier because you have people who come in from anywhere.
Yeah,
you have people. Oh yeah, I was an accountant, and then I figured out how to like play modular synth. Right. You meet these people who are so educated in music and have never stepped foot in a rehearsal or a concert hall or whatever. But when I was in school, I was like asking people, like, because I taught myself about classical music through YouTube.
Yeah.
My senior year, I was like, I'm going to music school. Like, I got in my youth orchestra somehow. I was last chair in the Richmond Youth Symphony. And we played Shostakovich 5, and I was like, man, this is cool. It was like metal. It was like intense, like super like nasty, hard.
Right.
So I kind of just like taught myself. I just kept clicking on YouTube.
Right.
I didn't study my senior year whatsoever for anything because I got in January, and I was like, oh man, I'm done. I'm just gonna practice and listen to music all day. So then when I showed up to school, I was not much better, but much better than my audition that previous January.
Yeah.
So then I get into music therapy classes, and it was the third day. It was a Friday. I'll never forget it. And I was wearing a Bathory hoodie. This black metal band's got like a big satanic goat head on it and whatever. And it was guitar class, like acoustic guitar. We're singing songs, and we started singing like Down in the Valley and Kumbaya and all this stuff. And I remember just like freezing, like, and I don't belong is what just popped. I was like, I don't belong here. Like, this isn't my zone. Like, I can't even fake my way through this. Like, I'm not singing for a test. I can't even sing. I'm not gonna sing a song I hate too. So I walked out and I called my mom and I was like, yeah, I got to switch to performance. Like, I'll get an orchestra job, or I like rationalized it somehow.
Yeah.
So I was like, fine. Right. And then going through school, so I was a performance major. Then I was like, oh, I'm really interested in like Morton Feldman and like downtown New York stuff and abstract expressionist art. And I was like, I'm going to be a musicologist. I'm going to write a book on all this stuff. And I started writing papers and giving presentations. And then it wasn't until my junior year when I played my junior recital, like a half recital. And my teacher the next day, we had like Donovan Stokes, one of the most amazing teachers, players, friends on the planet. He was the person who actually kept me playing bass. He was like, yeah, I can't really let you go to musicology school. And I was like, okay. Like, my whole world was like shattered. In my head, I was like, I'm going to University of Buffalo or wherever with the Feldman archives. I'm going to like Amsterdam where they're held. I'm writing I'm writing a book, And he was like, no, you got to go to school for performance. So I was like, well, the only thing I like doing is playing contemporary music. So I applied to 2 grad schools, one in Boston, Longy School of Music, and the Hart School of Music with Robert Black. And I got into Hart because I wanted to study with Robert, and that's how I ended up in Connecticut, and that's how I ended up in New Haven from being like, man, Hartford, there's nothing going on. Like, I was booking house shows, and people were just really confused. growing up south of Richmond, I started going to like legitimate. That's such a stupid way of saying that, but like real punk shows at a real punk venue when I was in
Yeah.
like 7th grade.
Right.
So by the time you like go to a couple real punk shows and you find out about all the illegal ones.
Right.
And then so I'm like in 9th grade, like getting dropped off in like whatever neighborhood in Richmond by my mom or dad, being like, "Oh yeah, it's just like right over there," you know.
Nice.
Like so, this culture was always kind of ingrained in me from like before I even went to music school. It's like
Right.
you go to a show, you pay for it, you buy records, like
Yeah, that's what you do.
that's how you find out about music. Like regardless of the internet helping me in this pursuit,
Right.
music, like you said, it's like the wild. The wild is where I grew up. So then going to music school and being like, oh, like what's your favorite, Schubert sonata piano student? Because I was like, I'm obsessed with Schubert and Bach and like
Right.
love early music. Trying to talk to pianists about playing harpsichord and they have no idea. It's like I ran into so many walls of being like, I'm speaking your language, and like you guys don't know about like the second movement of the fourth Brahms symphony. And you have a doctorate. You know what I mean? I was like, what? Like, I was confused because it's like that. Like, I'm not asking you about like Australian grindcore. Like, I'm
Right.
asking you about like something that like you're studying it and
supposed to know.
performing,
Yeah.
right? So like tutoring people, being like, oh, I don't get 20th century music, blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, viola student, like, what are you listening to? And they're like, I'm listening to things I'm playing on my recital. Oh, so you just like don't listen to music, like you actually just don't actually like listening to music, and that was my big takeaway. So like as now I teach and do do workshops and whatever.
Right.
It's so much like you're not going to play music that makes people want to listen to it unless you like listening to music first.
Yeah.
It has to come from like like everyone's done it. You've like clicked back on a song like 50 times.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can't say you've done that, like you shouldn't be on stage. Like that's
an interesting point because I have had like long car trips where I've listened to the same thing
can't stop
over and over and over and over and over.
100%. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I like
Me too.
and also like I'm in the cassette culture and putting out tapes and buying tapes and whatever. Having, listening to like a 20-minute side and then like rewinding it to play it again.
Yes.
Like that's a different type of like sicko level. Like you're gonna wait to go back. And like I do
Yes.
that. I wake up, I put a tape in, whatever. Oh yeah, that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of when I started running into people who like had problems with like performance anxiety or like being interested in music or having like being driven or like it's like going to classical music school. No one tells you to be creative.
Yeah.
They're like, you're bad. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like you go in being like, I'm bad. I could never be I could never play in the New York Philharmonic. So you graduate and you're like, I'm still really bad. I need to go to grad school. And then you're like, oh my God, everyone's better. I'm still super bad. I need to get a doctorate. And then you get out of your doctorate and you have no jobs and all the typical thing. But you have no background of actually making anything.
Yeah.
Like last music school horror story that I'll go into right now. But and like I went in like not knowing how to read music, not knowing how to count. Like I was not like gifted in music. I spent my whole undergrad, and everyone can message Donovan Stokes and tell him that I was like a sophomore in college being like 1 and 2 and like no one told me how to count, and I listened to
Right.
music that doesn't care. Nothing matters about counting when you're in punk music. You're listening to
Right.
it as like a feeling. You're not like 1 and 2. Anyway, so coming from someone who had to learn everything from like getting thrown into the pool to swim, I can kind of say this, but it was a conductor's birthday and everyone showed up to rehearsal. I was forced to be in orchestra in grad school, so I was like, oh man, back in it's Tuesday, 3 hours, whatever. And all of a sudden the orchestra assistant, the conductor assistant, puts happy birthday sheet music in front of all of us. And I'm sitting there being like, I'm definitely not the most virtuosic person in this room. We got people winning concertos and
Right.
Germany, blah 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 competitions, whatever. We got real rippers out here.
Yes.
And y'all can't play Happy Birthday in F.
Yeah.
You guys don't know that
Should
it
be
doesn't
able to
start
do
on
this.
do. Like,
Right.
and it's because you haven't even thought about playing music without sheet music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that concept like totally ruined. like seeing a room full of extremely highly trained like
right.
racehorses being like, you can run in the field, go. And they're like, what do you mean? There's no track. Like
Right.
I can't just do anything. It's like, how can you not you sing Happy Birthday? You've sung it since you were a child.
Yeah, you should just be able to play this.
You play Paganini. Come on. You know, so that's when I was like, I'm done, man. Like I can't hang with any of y'all. So like in school, like I didn't hang out with I have one friend from grad school. Not like, sorry, that's really dramatic. One really close collaborator and dear friend that I got from grad school because he had like a Samuel Beckett book on his desk, and we were sitting next to each other. And
Beckett brings everybody together.
Of course, yeah. So I like leaned over, and of course he's not a performer; he's a composer. My dear friend Adam Buffington, who's probably watching this. And I remember leaning over, being like, "Yeah, you don't see a lot of Beckett books around here. Like, what's up, man?" And then we ended up being collaborators. He wrote me this hour-long theater piece for me. A beautiful relationship that spawned out of grad school. Nice. That is one person. That is, you know, and you think like, "Oh man, I'm going to study with like the contemporary music bass guy. It's probably chock full of people, right? It's chock full of people that are thinking like me." No, you show up and everyone still hates playing contemporary music that they think is contemporary from like 1970. You know, like no one knows about anyone making music today within music school because they're all trying to get into Tanglewood. You know, and that's like summer camp. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like the thing. And so there's all these things that are put into place, and these structures that are put into place about like, you think you're going to music school and it's like this like extremely highly creative, everyone's like on the lawn like thinking about stuff, and it's like, you know, conservatory has like conservative in the name, you know. It's like you're not really liberal at all. Like you're not like, I had to fight to take classes about 20th century music.
Interesting.
Like I couldn't play my own music on my recital, you know. So it's, and that's at like a master's level.
Yeah, right.
And that's an issue. Like, you know, so it's like,
it is an issue.
That's a big issue of being like,
right.
I got into your school playing classical music, right? Like I played my excerpts, I played my concerto, I played my blah blah blah, you know. And now you're going to tell me that like within an educational context, I'm doing double the amount of work, and you're not going to let me do it for credit. So that's why I started booking house shows and started playing. Right. I used all of my loan, not all, but I used my loan money that I got for school to actually come to New Haven to take lessons with Joe Morris, and then used it to drive to Providence in New York and Western Mass to just go to shows and meet people.
Right.
So like, again, that one person, Adam Buffington from grad school, like, yeah, I had to make my friends, you know, and like I had to.
How did you know to do that?
It's the same process of finding. It's like Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, well, I have needs. I have needs for experimental music. I have needs for live music in my life.
Yeah.
So if you're living in a place that has like literally negative live music other than like a straight ahead jazz club, you know, like you got to find it. So I already knew about all these people and bands and noise people and improvisers from living in Virginia.
Yeah.
Because I also went to school, you know, where Winchester, I mean, it's in Appalachia. There's really, when I was there was nothing going on. And so I would drive to DC, I would drive home to Richmond. So I kind of just did the same thing when I was in Hartford. I was like, oh, wait, I found out about Carl Testa's series, and that's how I met Chris Gratella, and that's how I actually started playing in New Haven. But I would just be following people who lived up here,
right?
Because I would see them in Richmond because they were touring. I was like, oh, I can only,
right on.
I can just drive an hour and a half to go to Providence and see this person that I was waiting 6 months to see in my friend's basement. Yeah. So it kind of was the same thing of, if some place doesn't have it, you got to go find it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not going to go find it, then you actually don't care. You know, it's like that. And like, you know, talking about, I have needs to go out. I also have needs to bring things here.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like the whole house show thing. It's like, you know, there are people who won't do the hour and a half drive to go see someone play a Tascam.
Right.
And I get that. But, you know, but I'm willing to be that person to bring them here. And so bringing people from Norway or Italy or Australia, it doesn't matter, to play in my basement or at wherever, like you guys are paying $10 and driving 5 minutes when these people are playing New York for double the price, and it's going to cost you tolls and parking and blah, blah, blah. So that's like my like salesman pitch of being like, man, this stuff is actually happening in every other major city. I'm just friends with the people who either know them or them.
Right.
So they're like, oh, I'm going to Providence anyway. Like, I'll come stop, play a show in New Haven.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting all the same stuff.
Right. Right,
You
right,
don't
right.
need to leave. I had to leave,
Yeah. Right.
and it's not until you had to leave that you're like, oh my god, a 7-minute drive.
Yes.
Of course,
Right.
amazing. There's parking. It's like, so yeah, that's kind of, that's why I live here, and that's
Right.
why like I'll never live in New York. It's like straight up.
You're anticipating like all my good questions.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I can't believe you did that. No,
You can
so
ask whatever you'd like.
yeah.
No, I've
No, so the factoid part is like, so when did you move to New Haven? What year?
I graduated hard May 2016, so I moved in August 2016.
Yeah.
Summer, yeah.
Nice.
Uh-huh. What
Yeah,
year?
because I do feel like it was you really obviously hit the ground running.
Because I was already doing stuff, and
Yes.
I was already doing stuff because I couldn't let school take up all my time.
Yeah.
So I was already coming down here, like hanging out with people, and I was like, oh man, I really like it down here. It's small. It has the things that I need. It has a good scene. There are people doing things. I
Yeah.
mean, I was amazed by New Haven from Hartford because there's people walking around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, I lived in the middle of nowhere. Then I moved to New England in this kind of like desolate insurance town. Where nothing, you walk downtown, you literally don't see anyone walking around.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
spooky. And everyone, because the school's in West Hartford, we all lived out there. So
Mhm.
there wasn't that kind of like, oh, hey, like I saw my friend down at, Claire's, or, there's no
Right.
pool, right? There's no mixing bowl. So moving down here was, yeah, I can get to New York whenever I want, but I don't have to be there.
Right.
There's a train.
Well, why not New York?
I think it's evil. I think it's evil.
Can you be more specific?
Yes. No, I've
It's
seen
like
it.
a teacher. Can you be more?
Can you please elaborate? So I grew up in Long Island.
Mm.
I'm technically a New Yorker. I tell people I'm from Virginia.
Where in Long Island did you grow up?
Stony Brook.
Oh, yeah.
It's a place called Setauket. It's like 10 minutes from Stony Brook.
Yeah.
Tiny little.
I know where that is.
Yeah. Whoa. No.
I know.
Whoa. Long Island. I mean, I don't like Long Island way more than I don't like New York City. But New York, to me, it's like I have friends who live there who should be living there 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And people that I know that thrive there and love it and could never give up these amazing apartments for the very small amounts of money they're paying for them.
Yeah.
But I think New York is evil because it creates a standard which doesn't exist. You have all these people from like if you grew up in like the actual middle of nowhere, like middle of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Southern Ohio, whatever.
Right.
The idea of New York is like it's the Big Apple. Everything happens there, right?
Yeah.
But people are constantly.
I always think about how there's like is it 78, the highway that goes straight across Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Oh, the 2-lane. Oh, yeah.
Where there's if you cross the border from Ohio into Pennsylvania, it says New York 240 miles.
Yeah, totally. That's all you're looking forward to, man. And I think that's the issue is because you show up in New York and you're a brilliant composer, improviser, writer, name your whatever, and there's already like 900 of you, right? And there's no jobs. Your rent is whatever, 8, 9, even more, $100. And then you're working a couple of jobs to then sustain yourself, and then you need like another full-time amount of time to have a creative practice. And if you're an artist, my partner's a sculptor, so it's like you need a space, and you live in New York, and your rent's already this. Like you can't, you like physically can't make anything in New York. If you move to New York, you should already know your people in New York.
Yeah,
that's what I did. Like I started going to shows, and then I started meeting people who I liked what they did. And then gradually they were like, hey, you want to play? Or I'd be like, hey, you should come up and play in New Haven, or like we can play in New Haven as a collaboration, blah, 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 blah. And that's how I started, because you can't not do New York. If you have friends there, you have to go. And that's just like what you got to do. And that's why I live here, because it's like, it's not about like, oh, I live in New Haven because of New York. It's like, well, I still have to go to New York, but I'd much rather live here.
Yeah.
So it's like I can have my cake and eat it too. Like I can, if I'm playing like a nice, whatever bougie funded New York gig, like I'm profiting so much more on like a $300 gig, which is like my rent.
Yeah.
Compared to you who's living there and paying $120 a month for a Metro card on top of food. And if you want to drink one drink and do something, so that to me, I just immediately saw this as like a void of being like, I hate the subway. It smells bad. Like I don't. It's you know, there's no need for me to be there. I don't feel comfortable there. So
Right.
why do it? And it's really funny because it's so threatening to people. It's so threatening living in a place that nobody knows about, and they're like, man,
Yeah.
I moved here from like L.A. and you're living in Connecticut.
Right.
What? And it's like, yeah, but I get to travel internationally about 4 times out of the year
Right.
because my overhead is like a quarter of what yours is.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really that cool to live in New York when like I could be across the world? It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm long game. Like I don't. If you're gonna make fun of me because I don't live in the city that you live in, and like you're playing gigs that like you're making nothing on, and,
Right.
and you're just it's a constant struggle,
Yes.
which I don't want to. We already struggle enough.
Yes.
I don't want more things working against me.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, I'm sitting here nodding because,
Mhm.
and this is my like, yeah, I'm 44, so
Mhm.
I lived for New York. I lived in New York for a few years, where it was much more affordable.
Totally. Yeah.
Even and then people, even when I moved there though, people were saying like, oh, you can't afford it
Right.
anymore. But you sort of kind of could.
Totally. It was manageable.
It
Yeah.
was. Yeah, it
Mhm.
was. But I definitely remember that feeling of being like, to have the kind of life I want to have. I need about, if I'm going to stay here, I need about a mil five.
Totally. 100%. It's insane because it's yeah.
And I was going like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And that's okay. That's okay.
And that's what I tell people all the time who live in New York. You can move.
Yeah.
You can move.
Yeah.
You can totally move, and
Yeah.
you can move to another even bigger city than the one that I live in. You can pick anyone in the
Right.
world.
Well,
Go.
so how old are you? How old are you, son?
I'm 26 years
Yeah,
old.
no, it's but that's the that is the idea though, is that I think that what took my age group a good 5 to 10 years to figure out
Totally.
is so obvious now.
Right. Well,
that
that was the shift though. That was
Yeah.
like when it was like, okay, you can get like a cool warehouse or like a loft
Mhm.
or a real apartment,
Yeah.
and then it was like, oh, they're all gone.
Yeah, you can't do that
No
anymore.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, if you are making enough money to be there, if you're doing whatever, I don't like my aversion to it is seeing my friends get like trampled by it.
Yes.
It's like a personal
Same.
vendetta. It's
No,
not like
same
a
here.
I have a great time in New York. I love going to
Yes.
places down there, whatever. But it's the like getting phone calls from people being like, I'm having a mental breakdown. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I haven't left.
No,
I haven't
that's
left
how
the
I feel
city in
about it,
3
too.
years.
Right.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah.
And I take the train. Come here. It costs $16 each way. Get
Right.
out of here. You spend more on that than eating
Right.
2 meals. Get out.
Totally. You like hemorrhage money.
For sure. Yeah. So it's like that's always my thing when it's like people kind of think it's like an anomaly that I think this way, and it's just kind of like, well, I don't think you like have thought about it. I think
Mhm.
you're like, oh well, New York is obviously like I got out of school. That's what everybody does. It's like that to me is like worse than the suburban like.
Does that attitude? I was going to say though, I feel like that attitude has changed so dramatically. Like when I
Mhm.
graduated college, it was like that.
Yeah.
Where it was like, well, you're going to go to either like New York or San Francisco
Yeah.
or
Totally.
LA,
One of
maybe
these
LA.
places.
It's like there's a very
Right.
short list. Seattle. I mean, it was
Yeah, I think
it was maybe 4 cities, and
Mhm.
now I feel like people who are graduating feel like there are maybe 30 places
Yeah.
on the list.
I think it's
You know.
expanding, and places like Philadelphia and down the East Coast. I think
Mhm.
the South is also as to people who enjoy the South.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Asheville,
Right. Like Asheville has boomed.
totally, it's doubled.
Yes.
And I think about moving back down there a lot, but in kind of like a removed sense. Like later it's like, oh yeah, like I'll just move to the woods, whatever. But
Is that a thing you will actually ever do?
I have no idea.
Because I have this thing where it's like a quarter of me, fully a quarter, wants to live in like a cabin in the woods
Yeah.
and see nobody.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the other 3/4 of
Mhm.
me wants to walk down the street and get a latte.
Totally. I
And
don't
that 3/4 wins every time.
totally. Yeah, I don't think I could ever live alone. It's more just like relocating to a place that people also scratch their heads about. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
would love to find like I haven't been down there, but it's kind of like everyone recently they've been touring through who's been touring through North Texas.
Mm.
Oh man, Denton, Texas is like the new noise capital. You know, tons of shows. It's like, yeah, move to Denton. Move to Denton and like see some of the best music in the weirdest, grossest places, and nobody up in New England will ever have a concept of what that is. Like
Yeah.
that to me is like a metropolis, right? A totally untouched place where people are solely doing it just because they want to.
Mm.
And that's like, Tongue Depressor, the project I have with Henry Bursey, we recently did a tour on the West Coast. It was my first time being out there.
Mm.
And I can definitely say I like New York more than Los Angeles for sure.
Mm.
And that was kind of the thing. It was like I would rather play in, Portsmouth, Ohio,
Yeah.
than Los Angeles. People showing up late who are
Yeah.
playing, everyone like looks like, it's like so about itself.
Yes.
Where like New York, everyone has to ride the subway.
Yeah.
It's like the Equalizer. We're all here. It's gross. There's rats. Some guys peeing over there. It's like, but LA, it's like you got a car. Like,
Yes.
everyone's got this kind of, and I kind of just immediately hated it. And it's like, again, know a bunch of cool people in LA. Like,
Right.
they're amazing people, but it's like the place is not your fault. Like, you guys live in a place where you have to import all your water. Like, that's just insane. It's absolutely insane. So that was kind of like my thing, like the idea of cultures, or like having like a brighter light, like the moths, just come to,
Mhm.
it's like, it's Los Angeles, I'm gonna make it. And it's like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you want to, by all means, like, truck on. But
Right.
like I'm just the sole advocate of being like, you kind of don't have to.
Yes.
The internet exists. I know people who live in nowhere who play the same shows that you're playing,
Right.
and you live in Los Angeles. It doesn't, like, I play on the same shows that these people in New York are playing.
Right.
These, nice or not nice or whatever kind of gigs, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, we're past the time that you have to be like, people thought I lived in New York for a long time because they would only see me at shows.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, you only see your other friends at shows. So you guys don't oh wait, you don't have time to hang out. Like, I hang out with my friends all the time here.
Yeah.
Like, I could take off work to do this interview. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like not.
Where do you work?
I work for Anthony Braxton for the Tricentric Foundation,
Oh, awesome.
doing archiving.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, me and Carl Testa. Hey, Carl. And I also do. I teach. I teach one day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great job.
Yeah. I mean, also that was the pull to move here.
Sure.
I like hit them up and was like, hey, do you guys do internships or something? Because I was doing music cataloging in grad school. And I was like, I thought about getting, actually, instead of a performance degree, a musicology and library science degree too, so I could be a music librarian and do that whole thing. So that's kind of always part of me, record collecting.
Yeah. Right.
So then once I started, I hit up Carl and he was like, yeah, we need like another set of hands. And
Cool.
then it's been 3 years.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's very, very lucky. It's, super small operation, but super lucky to be involved.
Yeah. This is a good segue into the, like, you could live anywhere, but there are. So when I started this job, I don't even remember how many years ago now. It's less than 10. It's more than 3. It's I think that, like, one of the threads, I being the sort of person that I am, I'm always thinking of, like, whether you can pull together some, like, grand unified theory of New Haven's music scene, and you can't, but it's sort of like a really strong thread that goes back, the more I learn, the farther back it seems to go, is that New Haven has an appetite for experimental things, that's fairly unusual,
100%.
especially for a town of its size.
It's been going on since the late 60s.
Yeah, like a long time. That's a way to sort of preface, like, there are reasons that you moved here.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, even like macro universal reasons that just was like, this is this strange, I don't even want to say breeding ground, but almost like you camp out. Like, I've made more music in this town than I've ever made anywhere else.
Yes.
Live, recorded, collaborations, because it's not that you're allowed to, it's that you have the ability to.
Yes.
There's spaces, I have a house. I live in a house with a driveway and a basement and a room that I can have 4 people playing in, and we can record. I mean, just the
Yep.
ease of access. But um, that's how I viewed it before I even saw the history of it. Like
Mm.
working for Anthony, like going through like all of his stuff,
Right.
and I did some work for Wadada Leo Smith, who lives in town. So it's like
Right.
hearing
I
just kind
feel
of
like those two are a huge part of the reason.
totally them and
for
Marion Brown and all these people.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like 1970, and they're like, oh yeah, man, we were doing like shows at churches, like free jazz shows, and blah 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 across town. Remember that church over off of Wait? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like this has been not only for free jazz and stuff, but I mean throughout the. I can only speak for my friends who ran space throughout the past. I don't even know how long, but um, that hosted basically some of the best contemporary noise and experimental music on the underground kind of circuit for years on end. And and that's why people were like, "Oh yeah, you always said you got to come and play New Haven. It's gonna
Yeah.
be crazy." I mean, like if anybody is into the Paul Flaherty Tiger Hatchery live in New Haven LP, that I think that should be a testament to what happens here. And that happened a while ago,
Yeah.
And it's like to have things like that just being a part of a city that has a history is important, and to keep it going because there is no one really helping you. And
Yeah.
it's there isn't like we don't have a real venue for experimental music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the issues and the reason why like my house is like one of the only places that has house shows in town anymore. I mean, we need like a 50-person cap blank gallery room with a door.
Yeah.
Nothing else. PA and some chairs, that's it. But because people don't want to show up to a random person's house.
Yeah.
They don't even know how to find it. We can't even flyer because of addresses and all this stuff.
Right.
So it's like there are these like things that you work against, but because of the community here, it's so much worth the fight.
Yes.
Fight. That's so dramatic. I mean, the effort. I don't make any money on these shows. I charge money to give it to touring people, and
Right.
if we have leftovers, all the locals will get it. Like I will host, I will play, I will make the event, I will organize all these other people, and we'll take nothing from it solely because one, I want to see these people play, and two, other people in town need to see this.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we've all been there and been like in a tiny little back room of a restaurant with like 4 other people and had our minds blown by whoever, and that to me is way more important, and people need to have that. And if you don't have a space for that, like it's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it like the long like I don't know, metaphysical diatribe about experimental music. That's kind of like I've had my life like totally, my brain totally altered in like the funniest, stupidest places that concerts have happened with very few people, and it cost $5, and no one even knew it really happened. And you're just sitting there being like, how did they do it? Like, oh my god, and I want people to have that because that's how you click repeat. You know what I mean? You get hooked, and you have to get the bug to keep going.
Right. Now, so what you're doing isn't exactly illegal. I mean, this is sort of an important an important point to make. Mostly because I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, it's okay.
But also, like, what you're doing really isn't. It's okay to be doing it, especially like the way that you just described your the like where the money goes.
Totally,
like
for sure.
It's like people can do this.
Right.
It's not like you will have a show and then the police will show up at your door and
Totally. I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of the issues with addresses and stuff is mainly for noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
right.
we don't want anyone. We live in a neighborhood that is pretty noisy, so having there's not a lot of like, because it's not like rock music. People hate drums.
Yes.
So we kind of get away with.
Right.
It sounds like something's broken over there. They're like, oh, there's this long like, it's fine, but it's not like rock music, and that's what wakes kids up. And stuff.
Yeah, that's I mean, right. There's the whole sort of being a good neighbor part of it.
Totally, because you have to be. Everyone should be.
Yes. Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's sort of worth mentioning that like this is like a thing that people can do. It's not like you have to have an appetite for breaking the law to do
100%. Yeah, definitely.
It's fairly legitimate. I mean, if you were to, as I guess as I understand the law, it's basically like if you were to charge admission, you'd be in trouble.
Right.
If you were to serve food
Right.
or alcohol, you would be in trouble.
Right.
But having people over to your house and asking them to give money to the
Totally.
guests
Right.
is
Donations. Yeah. Totally.
is ask,
Right.
not demand.
100%.
But
Yeah.
be like, so it's a suggested donation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and that's how it always
Then
rolls.
you've done it. You know, and if for some reason the authorities were to be worried about you, you would be okay.
For
they
sure.
would be asking you,
Yeah.
and you'd
Right.
give them the truth, and they'd say, okay, great.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. Fine. Maybe don't do it as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
Totally.
your neighbors are not happy, but
We don't want to come over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
and
That's a whole other thing.
right. And yeah, and hopefully there are some people who have had that itch to say, oh, I want to host a show in my living room.
Right.
Because all of them, and it's like, and the thing when you say like the word experimental music
Mhm.
or like noise music, everyone thinks it's like always harsh and scary.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I've had shows in my bedroom of all acoustic music, of super small things, and it's like whatever someone's into, there's probably someone or 10 people doing it.
Right.
You can find your slice of the pie, and if you want to bring it to your house and get your
Yes.
friends to hear it, then do it. Just do it.
What do you
Please.
think the benefits are of doing a house show instead of asking a local club to?
Well, like financially, firstly.
Yeah.
Always.
For
Like,
the musicians.
for the musicians.
Yeah.
For people
Right.
who, especially playing this type of music, if you have, we're going to cut you half of the door, or the room costs XYZ, which are totally legitimate concerns for people staying
Right.
open. I'm
For
not.
sure.
I'm not coming at people about that.
No,
But
no. Right. I
but
wouldn't
if
either.
yeah, no, you guys have to stay open. It's just we don't
Right.
have
There's
enough.
this thing called rent. And
Yeah,
taxes.
and we don't have enough people coming to our shows to actually do this here, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, if you have somebody coming who's on a tour that they book themselves, if you can get them the most money that you possibly can, which won't be a ton of money, but will be more than you would get at a venue.
Yeah.
Also because houses and people going to a house show, they're real listening spaces where like I have my whole shtick or like my performance atmosphere is so not bar atmosphere. Like I have to be in a silent, quiet space, or I'm just gonna play way louder. Because you can't do detailed things when you have like beers cracked or people talking or whatever. So
Right.
the house kind of, if it's set up in a way that people show up on time and blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
that you have a way more silent space to make music. And
Mhm.
also the people who come, they know exactly what they're doing because they didn't walk off the street to some random house and found out there was a show. They're
Right.
there to see music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their only reason there is to sit silently and watch someone do something.
Right.
And to me that's why I make music. It's not these shows are very calm. They're not really parties. People aren't going crazy. Even
Right.
at crazy ones, they're really not that crazy.
Right.
It's just people listening to crazy things.
Right.
And that's what I try to stress to people is like, don't think you're like walking into like a house party with a show happening.
Right.
And I think that's the aversion because people think, oh, house show. Okay, well, the amount of times I've been to houses have been for like college, like keg parties or something.
Right.
And
Right.
it's really not. It's just a place to listen.
Yeah.
And that's a way easier thing to achieve in like someone's basement or their living room or bedroom than the local bar that will give you a Monday night just because
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think the music is the most important thing here, and getting people to hear it and actually listen to it. That's it's not like, oh yeah, it was nice. I couldn't. The bar was kind of loud. There's all these people yelling and stuff.
Right.
You didn't actually see anything. It's like that. That's why, like, I always, if there are no seats, whenever I play, like, I make people sit down,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
I like turn the lights off. I bring a light. It's like you're nowhere now. Like you're in my zone. I could be in a basement. I could be at Never Ending Books. I could be at wherever.
Right.
But controlling the space makes people listen more.
Yeah.
So it's like if you think that way, then if you think that way beforehand, what space is going to give you the most malleability to basically have like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a vacuum or something. I just want it to be plain as possible, so then anyone can come in and do what they want and bring what they have to bring.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like playing in a place with like red and blue lights on stage, and nobody changes them.
Mm-hmm.
You see 5 bands in the same exact lights. Everyone's playing guitar and bass and drums, and it's like I can't remember, what song was better, right? But if you like
Right.
turn off all the lights and put on like one tiny lamp, like wow, oh my god, I was like so gross. It
Yeah.
changes the whole dynamic. So
Yeah.
if you have a space that is conducive to doing that,
Mm-hmm.
then I think people might actually get into the weird stuff that you're playing
Right.
a bit more. It gives you an opportunity to have a clearer slate,
Right.
from a listener standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Because like listening to some like hours worth of music is like really tiring.
Yeah.
So if the visuals
yeah.
don't change,
Right.
you're just like, oh, this is like another guy playing a bunch of pedals. Like it doesn't. Who cares?
Yeah.
Give yourself the best shot. And it also looks cooler. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It looks cooler. Everyone's on Instagram and stuff. Looks way cooler. Come on. Like, don't, it's like it takes 2 seconds to think about what you look like because
Right.
you were getting watched.
Right.
And that's the issue. I think that's like my only like aesthetics issue about musicians is that it's not about like, oh, you need to like buy nice clothes. No, it's like, what does your performance actually look like?
Yeah.
And that was the main thing that like I gained from Robert Black in grad school. It wasn't really about playing the bass. It was more about presenting
Yeah.
ideas and presenting like, would you go to this?
Yes.
Would you buy this on tape or CD or vinyl? Right? If you walked into a space, what's exciting to you? Oh, chairs and circular seating. I'm in. You know what I mean? Like cool lighting. Like this looks awesome. It looks like a ritual. Like it looks like whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I'm after.
Right.
So when I was in school, that's how I like set up my recitals.
And there's something to be said about that, right? That I remember like for some reason, like whenever I interview people, sometimes if Prince comes up all the time.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But right, but one of the I remember talking to a friend many years ago about Prince, and we were just talking about how much we like him, and she sort of pointed out that that people want, when people go to a show, people want to they don't want the musicians to be like them.
Oh yeah.
They want them to be like, they want them to be different. They want to go to a different place. They want to see a different kind of person.
Totally.
And like that's part of what like Prince understood so fully.
100%.
Is
top
like
to bottom,
he's like he was one super weird dude. And like that was part of what made it work. Is that you go to see him and you're like, I am not in my normal place.
Totally. Well, even if you picked up a record, you pick up Purple Rain, you're like, I have to listen to this. Look at this guy on this motorcycle. You know what I mean? You're like, like everything about it. So it's like, whatever you're doing, whether it's records or live stuff or anything, like, someone's going to look at it and they're not going to know who you are.
Totally. And it's sort of important. I mean, the point to make about Prince is not that he was super popular, but that he was super weird.
He was super
and
weird.
And that's part of what made it popular.
And which is crazy, right? That's all. Like, you have all these people who are down with like really out stuff,
right?
And it's just packaging. It's totally just packaging. And I mean, it's not like we're not sitting here being like Prince tricked people, but
no.
He was totally open from the jump. But yeah, that's kind of my thing is like, teaching, and I do a bass workshop every summer at my old university, and I'm like the weird music guy. And recently I've been making a lot of tape loop music, slowly splicing pieces of tape and taping them. I feel like I'm like 13 again, but like I wasn't 13 doing it. Like all my friends now were. They're like, oh, cool, you're like making I haven't done that in a while. It's like, okay, so now I'm finally making electronic music or analog tape music, whatever. So I went to this camp and I taught lessons, I played normal stuff, whatever. But for my talk, I did a talk about making music outside the bass. So I played some tape loops. My partner made these giant aluminum Russian nesting dolls that I play as like chimes and whatever. And I was talking to a bunch of kids who are solely focused on playing the bass in middle school, high school, going to college, whatever. And the amount of people who are the amount of kids that were more receptive to me being like, you can think outside of your instrument. That like kids coming up to me afterwards being like, yeah, I never really no one tells you that you can play anything else. I was like, yeah, don't be like me. Don't go through 2 degrees and have to like shed a bunch of guilt and shame.
Right.
Even with improvised music, like,
Yeah.
getting away from playing in that language all the time was me breaking, shedding skin from 1 degree to the next, that like I didn't feel like I was allowed to make what I wanted to make. You're a bass player. You play the bass. So if you have a problem, you need to figure it out with the bass.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, no, if I have a problem, I'm just going to figure it out. And the best solution, it's like, well, if I want to play like Appalachian music, I'm going to play fiddle.
Right.
Why can't I learn how to play fiddle? You know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of the thing.
Right.
It's like, whether you're good or bad at it doesn't even matter. But if you're fixing a problem, like, go to the source.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be like, Donovan, my undergrad teacher, studied with Eggermeyer.
Mm.
So then, like, now you have all these Eggermeyer students playing like fiddle tunes on bass.
Right.
But it's like, it still sounds like a bass playing a fiddle tune. It's kind of like being forced to play Bach on bass. It's like, well, it was written for a cello, and if I told a violinist to play the Bach partitas up an octave, you would say it's impossible. But we're told to play the cello suites at pitch on the double bass all the time.
Huh.
And that's
right.
extremely difficult
Yeah.
to play in tune. That's why it sounds like trash all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, until you're like a virtuoso,
Right.
you can't, like, you're really like tightrope walking. Like, it's not
Right.
written for this instrument, but
Right.
anyone else, any string player's ears is going to hear that and be like, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's not good playing. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, but we're doing something
Yeah,
that's
it's
so
impossible.
hard. So
Right.
that's when I was kind of like, well, just do something else.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I don't like how this sounds. Like, then
Right.
I'll just pick up a different instrument. It's like, oh, I want to make like, like creepy noise music. It's like, yeah, you could do it on the bass, or you can just like buy some tape machine.
Yeah.
Like, I can
Right.
actually put my language into a different medium now, instead of having to just like, make the bass do something totally different again. And try to like, oh, it's not a bass. It sounds like
Right.
it's like, yeah, but you don't always have to do that unless that's like your goal.
Right.
You should feel free to be able to stretch and
Right. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with like, let's see how many sounds I can get out of my instrument. Of course.
And you should
Right.
I mean, dilute that. I mean, you should like beat it to a pulp.
Right.
Like, you should figure out every single screek, skronk, crinkle, anything on your instrument before
Right.
you say, okay, maybe this isn't
Yeah.
what I actually need. Because that's what I did. I hit a bunch of walls, and I, again, never thinking that I was ever going to be a performer.
Yeah.
I don't want to hate the bass.
Right.
I don't want it to be a job. I don't want to hate it. So why would I like keep trying to force it into a box it's not? So I was like, oh, well, I'll just start doing other stuff. I'm out of school. No one can tell me what to do. You know what I mean? It was like kind of this like little kid, like, oh, yeah. And it was because I went into school being like, I don't know anything. I need to really focus. I need, this is what I have to do. So when you're out and you like don't have any lessons, and like no one's telling you to practice and no one's telling you to do anything, you're like, yeah, cool. Like, maybe I can start like, a band playing, anything. Right? Oh, I have an idea for like a no wave band with a blah, blah, blah. You can combine anything and just do
Right.
it. You can play whatever you want. And New Haven, especially, not making it, I mean, I like talking about this. The amount of people that I know in town, the Headroom, Mountain Movers crew, that whole zone, everyone plays all sorts of different stuff.
Yes.
And
Right.
none of those people went to music school.
Yeah.
And they're better musicians than most people I know.
Yeah, and that's a sort of a good like dirty secret, right? That it's, I mean, ultimately there's that. I think like when you leave college or or leave high school or whatever it is that you've done, when you leave the education system, like there's that first week of your life where you're
Right.
like, well, do you play or not?
Right.
And it's like it's because there's no reason to do it.
No, there's no
other
recitals.
than that you want to.
Yeah, right.
Right. There's no structure there to keep it in place. There's just the well, I still want to keep doing this.
Well, and I think if you pose that question to every music student, right? If you had no auditions, if you had no summer festivals,
would you still play this thing?
Yeah, would you just pick it up and play for fun? For fun. It's called playing. Right? Like, that was my biggest realization as a teacher, where I was like talking to kids and I was like, yeah, play, G major and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wait. Do you ever just pick it up and do whatever you want?
Yeah.
They're like,
right.
No, I just practice the things you tell me. And I was like, okay, we're done. You have to just play something.
Right.
Go home and do whatever you want, but it's called playing. You know how to do it on a tire swing. do it on this, right? I don't care. I literally
yeah.
don't care what you do. Just do something that you want to. And I think if you start that at an early age, you can kind of subvert all of these, like, I don't know, real instrumental, emotional baggage, guilt kind of situations,
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of people are like, well, my teacher wouldn't want me to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but your teacher, like, is like, your teacher's teaching you technique.
Right.
Your music is your music. No one
and
can
quite
teach you how to
possibly
do
your
that.
teacher really does want you to do that.
100%.
They're just teaching you how to play your instrument.
Well, and also
they're not teaching you like how you should be playing music, period.
100%. And you're also working within a strict confines. Like your teacher's teaching you for your jury or your recital or your next audition. If you walked in and you said, hey, I wrote a violin sonata, and they couldn't help you, then I would say you got a problem. Like you have a real, and that was the thing. If you don't have a teacher that can stretch that way, then you either need to find another solution or a new teacher.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, not to be so hard-edged about it, but I've recently met and am going to start teaching a couple of kids who are in high school who are so creatively minded and who have either found out about what I do via the internet or through the space workshop, that basically want to start doing composition lessons.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's like, you're a high schooler and you're into like weird stuff and you like dug up your dad's 4-track and are sending me videos of you playing tapes backwards. It's like, this is exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because you're going to figure out where your thresholds are with this, right? You're going to figure out when this becomes boring, and then you're going to take this and then put it into something else. Because you're in high school and there's no rules, and you're only doing this because you want to.
Right.
And that's like all the records that we talk about loving and all the pieces and all these things. All these people just did it because they wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, like classical period music aside, but like most of this stuff, like all the fiddle stuff that we've talked about, and like those people, like regardless if Alan Lomax showed up at their house, they would still be playing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like that's like the holy grail. That's like this would still happen. And if that's still going to happen, then you should be making music. If you worry about it, then you should rethink some stuff.
Right.
Or just think that you don't have to be a full-time musician, which is also
it's totally fine.
It's totally okay. Because people stress too much.
Yeah.
I think with like they feel like they have to be a full-time musician and they can't just play with the people that they want to. They have to, they see their friends doing something or someone got a record on blah blah blah.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you had a record, if they give you a record next week, it would probably suck. You know what I mean? It's like you're not prepared to do that, right? It's like, and that's okay. Like, some people aren't prepared to be touring all the time.
Yeah.
I hit that wall for sure. Being like, oh, I can't be gone all the time. This is ruining me. And the only way you're going to find out is when you're gone too much.
Yeah.
So it's all about balance, like figuring things out like that.
This is a good place for me to fulfill our FCC requirements. By the way, I'm amazed that neither of us have sworn.
I've been.
We're doing an amazing
really
job.
trying.
I know it's hard. It is. It's hard.
I had to keep that in the front of my mind the whole time.
Yes. So do I. But you're listening to Northern Remedy here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from New Haven, Connecticut. This is a show dedicated to New Haven's music, past, present, and future. And I'm talking with Zach Rowden, who is a musician and scene organizer. I don't know. Who knows how to describe these things?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But since we've been talking about your music, we should hear more of it. So
Wonderful.
which one should we hear?
Well, I brought up.
You've been talking about. I want to talk a little bit about your collaborations with other people. So let's go with that.
Cool.
Should we do?
Well, we can talk about Paul, and then we can end with me and Henry, because that's a whole bag to unpack.
Okay, right on. So this would be Paul Flaherty.
Yeah, me and Paul Flaherty. It's a new track.
Flaherty. Oh
Flaherty.
My God.
Yeah.
See, people mispronounce my last name all the time, and now I just did it to him. We have like the same last name.
Yeah, this is off of a record that isn't out yet, but bass and saxophone.
Cool. That was Paul Flaherty and Zach Rowden, off of something that's coming out soon-ish. Sounds
Soonish.
like
It's finally mixed and needs to be mastered and hopefully
cool.
we'll
Does
put
it
it
have a
out.
name yet?
No, no, nothing. Yeah, we just we recorded it last summer, and then yeah, we were getting it mixed, and I'm gonna send it to a bunch of people, and hopefully it'll be out. You know,
Awesome.
trying to get like a record, like a real record LP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, because we did this show with me, Paul, which you did a great write up for, with me, Paul,
Yeah. Thank
Chris,
you.
and Meta, and yeah, so it's like there are these new Paul projects that I'm super excited about because he's also never played duo with a bass player.
Huh.
Like one of our first gigs, he's like, "Yeah, man, it's crazy. Like never had to duo with a bass player." I was like, "Really?"
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's played with
Yeah, he's played for a
hundreds of-
long time.
Yeah,
Tell
totally.
to tell people who don't know a lot about him, including myself, about Paul Flaherty.
Paul Flaherty, I think is one of the best kept secrets of American free jazz history. He lives in Bloomfield, Connecticut, which, like, anyone who knows anything about Connecticut or Hartford, it's like Bloomfield is like the suburbs. It's where I went to school, in Hart School. He's a house painter. He's had a 20-year long standing duo with Chris Corsano, who is the drummer who can do anything.
Yeah.
And Paul has been playing his music for as long as I can, honestly, like that he can.
Yeah,
he would tell
I'm pretty
me
sure like as long as I've been alive,
totally, yeah,
longer.
and he's always been on this way of creating his language through free jazz that is totally him in so many ways, you know. Because he was at like the kind of in the forefront of that. Like he would get like he would show up to like a jam session, like a jazz jam session, and like everyone would like stop playing when he would start soloing. Like he had to deal with that like really hard edge jazz vibe bro thing. So like when he was like, well, like I guess I just I guess I don't fit in here and I don't fit in over there, so I just got to make my own music. And then
Yeah.
when him and Chris started playing, I mean, Chris is 40, so
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know. I mean, I've listened to so many Paul records, but the details are it's always him. He's never like backed down from making his music.
Yeah.
And that's why it's interesting to play with him, because it's like I come from a totally different world. I've never played real jazz. Never learned how to really play changes. All the free jazz stuff I know I'm taught by Joe Morris or just playing improvised music gigs, and people started swinging. So I listened to all those Ornette and Cecil and blah 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 records. So
yeah.
I did my best, but it wasn't until kind of recently when I started playing with him that I kind of figured out, and that was kind of a bad track to show me stretching out my free jazz chops. But there's a lot of parts on that record that is a lot of heavy, like plucked, gross kind of Fred Hopkins style stuff. So it's amazing playing with Paul because he actually is free when he plays.
Yeah.
He'll start playing like super melodic kind of jazz, like ballad stuff, and then like 2 seconds later you're hearing like circus music or like mouthpieces off squeaking.
Right.
Like he's connecting with someone who is much older than you and has the same exact mindset of just being completely intuitive is really rare. And not being rigid about it, and like there's a lot of older improvisers who don't move. They don't move, and you're playing what they're playing. You have to do it. We're playing with Paul is like I'm surrounding his whole world. You know what I mean? Like he and I come in and out of it, and there's tracks on this record where he's like doing super heavy drone stuff with me, and like we have this great kind of give and take of like these two worlds. And usually I play with people that make a lot of sense. I don't really play a lot with like new people that often, but like, I have a project, a duo with a cellist in New York named Layla Bourdre. And it's like, when you hear what we do and you know me, you're like, oh, duh, cello and bass, super scary, really loud, drone,
Yeah.
But with Paul, it's kind of like, it's music that I couldn't imagine existing. Because it's a music that I like, but I don't really participate a lot in.
Yeah.
So when we started playing it and we recorded it, and he was like, man, this works. It's kind of strange that it works, but it works. And I was like, yeah, it does. I don't know why, but it does, and I think that's when you've hit something interesting, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know why this is actually working out. I'm doing
Like,
this.
why are you interested in it?
Well, yeah, totally. But like, why does this record like sound great? Like, why the material itself is totally not juxtaposing, but just from two totally different cuts of this whole musical language.
Yeah, and there's no reason why. Like, I mean, I feel like I tell people this all the time. It's like there's plenty of music I've played that I have no interest in listening to.
Totally.
It's like it was fun.
Right.
It was probably fun to hear if you were there, but like there's no reason that it needed to exist after that.
100%. And I think that
and that's fine.
And
like
that's fine.
That's music. Right?
It's about having that measuring stick of saying,
yeah,
this was something I wouldn't listen to. And I think that's the issue that we get into when you deal with.
But it's fair to try it. You
always
set up
try.
the microphones, you see how it sounds.
100%.
And sometimes you listen back and you're like, so that was fun to do, but
not
it's
so much
actually
fun to
not that
listen
interesting.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's where me and Paul kind of landed. We were like, this feels great, but like actually sounds pretty good too.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, for him, it's much easier, not much easier, but he has a really codified language that can kind of fit with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's showing up, so we know roughly we're in this zone.
Mm-hmm.
Where for me, it was a great task to take the kind of doom metal-y, scary side of me and make like evil free jazz. You know what I mean? It's like the thing about a lot of free jazz stuff. It's usually just like super virtuosic. No time, no changes, or time, no changes. Blah 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 blah. Right? You're ripping through these crazy scales, etc. Whatever. But there was never any. There was very few records that really like got me in my gut. People like Frank Lowe, it's like stuff like really, really intense stuff is what I was kind of after. But there was obviously, because at the time doom metal didn't exist, but there was nobody taking it to like Milford Graves did in a way with all the percussion ensemble stuff and the really loud, heavy stuff. But I hadn't really seen anyone, but I didn't really sink my teeth into something that I thought was kind of where I was viewing it from. So I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to play free jazz, like I'm not going to be a phony. I'm not just going to do what a bass does. I'm going to do what I do and then morph the edges to kind of lock in. And I think it worked. Everyone can tell me if I'm lying or not when the record comes out. But this is one of the things that I'm really excited about is this duo of Paul, this quartet stuff that just happened, which I think for the combination of the four people that were on stage was a really good result, really interesting, not what we were expecting.
Yeah.
So it's like that's all you can ask for.
Now, did you connect with Paul while you were at Heart?
I wish I did. He always says that. He goes, "Man, they kicked me out of the practice rooms out there. I used to practice, and they found out I wasn't a student." He was like, "But I wish I knew that you were putting these shows together, and I would have just." He goes, "I would just love to come and play and hang out, and meet some young people in town." So yeah, I didn't meet Paul. How did I meet Paul? We played a show at Never Ending Books, and I remember, I think I just Facebook messaged him.
Yeah,
and was like, "Hey, you want to play sometime?" And it was like the gig was the first time that we played, and it was cool, but we were like feeling it out. And then the second time we played at the old Willimantic Records, and it was like brutally cold. I mean, it was February. Everyone drove an hour and a half, whatever. Obviously, Willimantic is amazing. One of my favorite show at Willimantic Records is the best. Shout out. Go to your local record store, or your not local record store.
Yes.
But we played there, and that was when we were both like, oh, cool. Like, this is, like, I brought a bigger amp. He could push a bit. I pushed him a bit. So it was like, oh, great. And then we recorded, and then we played, I think, one show since, and then we played this quartet show.
Yeah.
Because he's got a job. I can't ask him to come down on a Tuesday or something. So that's kind of also the things that you deal with when working with people from different generations or different work mindsets or whatever.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I'm happy that we have a record to put out. You know what I mean? It's not, getting recordings done and them being worthwhile. And you could just wake up having a bad day and you got a 5-hour recording session. You still got to do it.
Yeah. This sounds like it. This sounds like a record that got recorded quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we
Doesn't have to be longer than that.
No. We did a session and then we did a show that night, like a live recording. But honestly, it like any other type of improvised thing, it always comes from the beginning. You know, it's like 5 tracks and then there's one 20-minute track that is, I think the B-side, the 20-minute track, I think is like the culmination of the whole idea of the duo for me. There's like a really long, gross bass solo, like really slow, whatever, and he just like destroys it. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. So
well,
yeah.
So definitely. I mean, one of the effects of living here and hearing a lot of live music here is like when I first showed up in New Haven, I didn't have it's not that I didn't like experimental music, it's more that I didn't know how to approach it.
Oh, yeah.
I just didn't know. You know, it's like
no one does.
And it's not that and it's not that I mean, obviously I got there because I just tried and tried and tried again.
Yeah.
But thanks to there being so much of it around here, when I was listening to it, my response to a lot of it now is to laugh.
Totally. I mean, most of it's totally.
And I want you to respond to that because I think that there's a way that people think of it is that it's like very super serious.
Oh yeah.
You know, like that we're all supposed to be like putting on our black turtlenecks
100%.
and you know, getting out our like musicology texts and
your
placing it in this
pads
context and I've done a total 180 about that.
Totally. And I think more people should to if it takes having some humorous element to get you in, then get in.
Yeah.
I don't care how people take or have inroads. As long as you have an inroad. If you want something to be super serious, you're in the best place, right? You know, watching someone turn a knob with this grimace on their face. I think and that's when I like, unless it's something that I'm, you know, like somebody recently was like, all right, everybody, like, come on inside. Like, we got to watch him click play on this task cam. We all want to watch him do it, you know? And it's like, yeah, you're right. You know, and it's like, and if you can't think about it outside of like, yeah, the music is super serious and scary sometimes or whatever, or like really thoughtful or patient or something.
It's not to say that I find the music funny.
No, but it is extremely funny, the amount of effort, seriousness, dedication. I mean, you see someone load in like 3 full stacks into a basement to play like a 10-minute set. I mean, you have to laugh and they'll laugh with you. Yes. You know, no one's going to be, they're going to be like, yeah, because I need 3 full stacks. Duh. Yeah. And they'll be like, yeah, again, it's like you have needs, like bring them on. But if you're not willing to actually chuckle sometimes, this is not the place for you. Because you have to, because it's like, man, we're all like crowding around watching this person like bow a piece of cardboard.
Right.
I think it's awesome, but if somebody walked
in, let's also be real about what's going on.
They're bowing a piece of cardboard. Yeah, they could be the best person to do that, but if you zoom out just a little bit, like we are so lucky to be able to do this. You know what I mean? Like, oh my god, watching. I can't even get into the amount of like, and I'm just talking about good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that rock music, pop music, they at least have a time limit.
Yes.
The improvised music curse of, these people, whoever they are, show up playing whatever they brought, play for, and then because in America you play for like 20 minutes and you're done. Usually. If there's less people, you play for longer, but whatever, people show up, don't have any idea about actually playing improvised music. They play for about 45 minutes and then they get to an ending and someone makes the one like, and then they're back at it. You're like, no, make it stop. Like, it's not a song. There is no ending. Right. So, that's another like kind of like, you have to laugh at it. If I got angry at every set that I didn't want to be at, man, it's like being on tour.
It's brutal.
Yeah. You don't know what you're running into. And I'm not, I'm not saying this is all the time, but if anything, there's a large spectrum of people, and especially with music that people say you can do anything, you can do whatever you want, and it's like, well, when you're improvising with other people, it's like talking. You're actually not going to do whatever you want, right? It's like you could start screaming right now during this interview, but you're not going to.
That would be counterproductive.
That would be counterproductive, even in a juxtaposed standpoint, right? You know, so it's like when you think like that and you make music with people, it's actually going to be much better. Of like you're like I think people overthink listening. You're like, oh, you got to listen to each other. It's like, no, like just make music you want to make with them.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing what you're doing, try to do something that they're doing, and maybe they'll come back. I don't know. It's kind of like having a conversation. It's kind of like discussing something.
Kind of exactly like it.
It's kind of exactly the same. You know, and so that's like my thing about people who make improvised music, and this is coming from someone who honestly I've been feeling like I'm really kind of removing myself from it in a way, because I think it's really heavy and becomes really culty. And it changes people's perception of how they make music, I think, because they feel like they have to do something. You know, if you showed up and played one note on an improv bill, they wouldn't think you're improvising.
Right.
Honestly. And if anybody wants to come at me about that, we can talk. But because improvised music has now become its own language, and I think that's an issue. Right.
Yeah.
If that and you can't stop it because you have conservatories, you have teachers, you have all this stuff. And so I'm kind of just like, it's just I don't really get fulfillment as much as I did. So like for me, it's like there's like an aesthetic thing now of being like, no, like I kind of just tell people I play drone music.
Yeah.
And whatever they think about it is whatever they think. But once for me, it's like weirdly loaded to be like, oh yeah, I play improvised music. And then if anybody knows anything,
it does suggest this specific.
And then you say you play bass, and they're like, oh, you play jazz? And you're like, no, I don't. Right, so it's like I would rather be called a drone musician or whatever than an improviser, because then you're assuming that I'm going to go beep, boop, but beep, 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 beep. It's like, no, like I don't. The fact that you can play any type of music, I'm gonna. Right? Like I'm going to play whatever I actually want to. If I'm playing alone and it doesn't fit your aesthetic palette, then how can you tell me that it's not improvised?
Yeah.
Right. Now that's your problem. Right, you know, and I think I think that's like an issue for me with this type of music, is that you hear all these records and a lot of them sound the same because they're all trying to fit into this established language in a medium of music that has no language.
That is like how quickly that happens, though, right? Like
100%.
How quickly innovation becomes cliche.
Totally.
I mean, I feel like it's like a good. Like I was reading, I'm one of these people who. I read Django Reinhardt's biography.
Whoa.
It's great. For starters,
I can only imagine.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a little bit like this wasn't look how amazing he was. But the thing is, like, he kind of was that.
Oh, I don't
like,
doubt that.
You know, it's like, fair enough. We can canonize this guy all we want, I think. It's fine. Like, that doesn't bother me.
No.
But even, like, they talk about sort of in the book, like, how quickly, like, that man's innovations just became the language of how you play jazz guitar.
100%.
And then,
so quickly.
like, later on in his career, people would be like, you're just playing a bunch of cliches. And he's like, but...
Dude, I started it.
Yeah. And he was like, but that's like, this is how I play.
You guys took what I've been doing. Yes. Yeah, totally.
And it's sort of like, what a double-edged sword that would become, right?
It's crazy. You know, and it's a weird line.
And he didn't live very long. I mean, you don't see, like these things that he made up in his 20s, like, by the time he was in his 30s, they were like just the language of jazz guitar playing.
Because you're also dealing with a medium that is totally at that time like a popular music.
Yeah.
So if you think of something super cool, fast, flashy, virtuoso, you got two fingers, whatever, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, of course everyone's gonna jump on it.
Yes.
That's why I love.
And they did.
Yeah. That's why being in this scene that is like a puddle. It's like a puddle within a puddle. It's like if somebody steals from you, take it.
Yeah.
I know where we all know where it came from.
Right.
There's like a very small trail of breadcrumbs here, and that's cool. It's fine. But, it's like, I always think about that of being like, you have to keep that in your head. Because, intellectual property is important, but it's like, it's like none of this means that much that I'm going to come at anybody, but they definitely know for anyone, conversations I've had with other people.
Right.
I really think they're just coming on my, taking some of my stuff.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's fine.
But we all steal.
100%. But it's stealing and not doing anything with it.
Yes.
I would love for people to steal from me and make it way better.
Right.
Do it. Let's
Right.
come on. I'm so in. But don't just fall into tropes of someone's aesthetic palette and take it and try to make it your own.
Yes. Right.
Or it's like, oh, everyone's into like, I don't know, like glitchy, whatever kind of like sample, cut up stuff. Well, I guess I got to do that now.
Yeah.
No, like, and that's, to bring it to the last tune.
Yeah, I see how we're heading in this direction. Because
to do something, yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, you go ahead.
Well,
no, you go.
No, I swear it's your turn. I think so. Like talking about experimental music and the scene and improvised music and whatever, people always like kind of this like old school language of saying something's out. It's like, oh man, it's really out. You know, I think recently in the past, I guess almost 2+ years that me and Henry, which is this project called Tongue Depressor, have been playing, we're so out because we're in. Like we're playing chords. Like we're playing like 4-note chords. Yes, they're retuned and detuned and moved around, but you can show your grandma this stuff and she's gonna say, "Oh, it's pretty violin drone, whatever. It's a nice little chord." And it's like blown people's minds that we can just show up and play a chord or like play like capital M music, right? It's not cut up. There's no abstraction. There's no tricks. It's 2 fiddles. Sometimes we play other instruments, and that's we're working on a bunch of other stuff. But I think it's caught with a lot more people because of we're standing our ground of just making music for the sense of making music. It's like, we play on shows with like harsh noise people and we're playing fiddle. Like that's so uncool. And it's but it's so cool to people. You know what I mean? It's like it takes a couple years of doing one thing for a while, or at least actively enough, and touring it around and recording for people to think it's like, oh man, this is like a totally new thing. And it's like, man, we're playing with like ancient tuning systems on like, and through a aesthetic lens of an instrument that is like everybody knows what a fiddle is.
Yes.
From cartoons, from the radio, from
commercials,
jokes. Yeah, it doesn't matter. A logo, whatever you mean. You know what a fiddle is, and you know, right?
Yes.
You can make fun of it, right? So when people see what we're doing, they're kind of like, "What? Oh my god! Like, this is totally not out. It's like, but it's so crazy because you guys are just doing kind of this super old thing. Like we're playing minor chords.
Is there? Do you think there is an out anymore?
I think there will always be an out because people make an in. Because the out stuff, like, because we're in this like post everything age, post internet, like we're beyond, we're like postmodern.
I mean, I think of it now as like there's just like an eternal present.
Totally. And
like,
I would love to.
The history of music is sort of like collapsed into like some weird, everything happening at the same time kind of stuff.
I'm so with you, but so many people would disagree.
But I think for people, I think for people like starting out now, I mean, that's just how it looks. Because it's all there.
100%.
And you don't have to dig. You can dig. It's the same amount of digging to get to like Beyonce as it is to get to like an Arabic 78
100%
from 1923.
Yeah. Thank you, Canary Records.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's not like there's no wormhole to go down.
Totally,
It's just
there's
just all there.
Well, yeah, there's just so many wormholes that it becomes,
and it's on YouTube.
Everything is on YouTube. Everyone, get back on YouTube. The amount of stuff I find on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
I like to think there's an out. I think I just want there to be an out.
Yeah,
because. Like a real out, like, like people like Jack Smith from back in the day. Like no one talks about Jack Smith. Jack Smith was like a androgynous performance artist in the late 50s doing like 6-hour-long performances. Like Zorn was his assistant, like worked with Tony Conrad, and like all these early New York people. But it's like Jack Smith is still out. You know what I mean? Like Jack Smith is so on another planet. That like, and that's one of the many people. So I like constantly,
There's definitely that group of people where you'd say like, your stuff is still weird.
Still weird.
It's been 60 years and it's still weird.
And meeting people now that remind me of stuff like that, not even aesthetically, just like like the mindset
Yeah.
of like, well, yeah, I have to. This is what I do. You know, like another local favorite, if I can shout him out, is Nick Grunrud. Has a project called Underwear.
Yes.
Underwear is so in that he's so out. It's like you watch an underwear
Right.
set and then you kind of like look at what he's wearing and kind of start catching more of the jokes, and then you kind of see how it's all going on. You're like, you're
Yeah.
a maniac. You're an absolute maniac. You know, so it's like Nick will always be out regardless if he's singing pop songs.
Right.
And that to me is like those are the people like Nick today put out a new record.
I feel that way about him too. That you're just like, you are very unique.
There will never be another Nick Grunrud, hands down. So for everyone who lives in town, go follow him on Instagram or something, because
it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's like, you know, me traveling around, you know, all over the world or whatever. It's like I talk about people from New Haven being like, you guys got to hear this guy named Underwear. You know, like you're never gonna hear anything like this ever again. And you know, it's like it's like I'm in like Romania talking to people about Nick, who like, you know, it's like, but those are the people who need to be talked about. Like he's not gonna have a Wire article.
Right.
He's not. He's a total outsider. He deserves so much for what he's done and the amount of music that he makes and the comedy and all this stuff. But he's just so on an astral plane that he's out. It's like the outside, you know, if you look at people like Harry Parch or, you know, any of those type of like these kind of moguls that have become idolized now, it's like, dude, they were constantly, you know, they were butting heads with literally everybody to make the music that they wanted to.
Right. This is a good segue back to Tongue Depressor, because as you probably remember, the first name out of my mouth was Henry Flint.
Yes, of course.
Who is how do you describe that guy? His
minimalist hillbilly music.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's two ways to discover Henry Flint.
Yeah.
Like, one of them is that you are a traditional Appalachian fiddle player, and he eventually crosses your radar for that reason. Right. And the other reason is because you're like an avant-garde composer.
Totally. Yeah. and or you read his crazy text on his bad website.
Yeah. But he's sort of sitting there in the middle of like, I feel like he's sitting there in the old weird America category.
Totally. He's the crossroads.
Yeah.
He's totally the crossroads between, I mean, me and Henry Birdsey talk about this all the time, about people like Henry Flint and Tony Conrad and all these people, but Henry Flint is really the only one who is looking at American traditional music in an avant-garde way. Right. That he wrote as much as he did about it. 100%.
That helps.
Yeah. It does help legitimize and put a real point
that he's
on.
Like, look. Yeah, that he's like, look, like this isn't just me like messing around here.
No, I'm coming at this from like a historical.
I've tried to think about this.
Right. And and his use of bringing in like Carnoctic vocal exercises and all sorts of stuff, and raga drones and multi-tracking tape stuff. I mean, it was totally innovative, and then he has all this weird rock records. It's like, that's what makes him super American. He's like, oh, I got to start a rock band.
Totally.
But
that's a good point.
You can't get that far away. So when I started listening to Henry Flint, I was in college, and I was really into minimal music. I mean, I still am, but I was really into heavy minimalist repetitive stuff. So finding hillbilly tape music, finding all of those records, I was like, this is it. It's like outsider. It's anti-institution. It's anti-art. It's like more punk than anything.
Right.
And this is like 60 whatever, 70 something.
And also oddly super institutional because of the way he writes.
100%. Which is like which is kind of the thing where it's like if you can't beat him, join him. He's like, well, I'm gonna play my own music and write my own stuff, but like I'm gonna write about it that an academic could read it and understand what I'm talking about. Which is like a weird flex. Like, it's a weird thing to do because it takes so much time, and very few people are reading these extremely complex texts weird. Other than people like us. But so yeah, I mean, Henry Flint was a huge influence on me, just even thinking about the idea of being from America. And that's been a recent kind of, and Tongue Depressor is kind of part of my outlet as that. Once I started traveling internationally, I didn't realize that I was American.
I have exactly the same.
Yeah. Everybody here says you're European, and everyone there is like, oh my God, you're so American, and you're like, huh, I don't really fit anywhere. And then I was kind of like, no, I'm definitely from America.
Yeah.
I'm for sure from America. And then that's what kind of started my wheels turning of being like, man, I've been listening to all this old time music. I've, Henry Flint, blah, 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 field recordings, Lomax, shape note singing, all this stuff. I should just play. I'm teaching these kids how to play violin. I took a violin pedagogy class, whatever, I could teach you, play Twinkle Twinkle Stars years ago.
Right.
Then I was like, oh, I should like learn how to play violin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching these kids. I could play all these scales, but like I should like play at least. And then I was like, no, I should actually like I should start playing fiddle. And then Henry and I met through a piece that he did for his thesis up at Bard. This 5 bass piece and whatever, and we traded. I recorded some stuff for the electronics part, and he recorded 2 solo records of mine. Awful deal, but and I think one of the days I feel like we don't I should call him. We don't actually know. I think it was one of the days of the solo recording. We both had our fiddles in the car, and we were at the Bard recording studio in the summer because he was graduating, or yeah, and he was like, oh yeah, we should just like play. All right, so we like made this like total trash music, like amplified prepared violins with like metal and just like really abstracted stuff, and we kind of laughed about it and whatever. But that's in turn what became the first tongue depressor tape.
Yeah.
Which sounds nothing like what we did after that. So then once we started playing, and once we kind of, because Henry's a huge sacred music fan, organ, choir. I mean, last night he called me and was like, "Oh man, I got a new Jess Waldo CD." I mean, we're like nerds, we're like
right.
big nerds. So once we started talking about starting a project, I was like, I'm really interested in Appalachian like Pentecostal movements of snake handling churches, and that whole like the occultism about it, and trance states, and how that relates to drone music, and he was like hook, line, and sinker, like, oh, I'm down, I'm totally down.
Yeah.
So that's what was
right.
like the conceptual basis of our band. So then we started playing. We were roommates at the time. He now only lives a whopping 4 blocks away, but we were roommates at the time, and he's a recording engineer. So we just started recording like weekly, doing sessions and figuring stuff out, and so that's what started the whole like. I mean, because I'm like a record nerd and an archivist and all this stuff. I was like, we should start a series, and that's what started the Fiddle Music series, which is just Fiddle Music drones. And now we're up to volume 4. Volume 5 should be out in August. And yeah, it's kind of become a larger concept the longer you do something and the deeper you go into it. Like, if anyone's listening to this and has a copy of any of the Fiddle Music, you should look at your track titles, because the track titles are like our trail of breadcrumbs. I have this big book on snake handling called Them That Believe. It's like an encyclopedia, basically, of any death or anything to do with, and like, the phenomenology of drinking poison and stuff like that. But we take names from that book and other places that are all related to the history of it, whether it was being bitten by a snake, the French chemists in the 1700s who made the poison that they drink, and trying to create a narrative about like, this happened in America and no one's actually accepting it.
Yeah.
Like, these people still exist. Like, Nat Geo did a thing on it. This is a huge narrative about being American that I'm interested in, and he is as well. But relating it from Americanism or being an American to like the idea of an American drone or the American trance state is totally different than like Tibet or India or wherever that you usually think like meditative drone stuff comes from.
Right.
Like a shape note tune, you hear 80 people sing something, and that's like the loudest drone you're going to hear ever. You know what I mean? All of those tunes and fiddle, we've talked about fiddle tunes and the repetition and everything. We want to focus on that, but just kind of slow it down. And then being interested in just intonation, we're like, well, we like just intonation intervals, and then we like Appalachian music, and we like this narrative, so we kind of just put it in a blender.
Yeah, and you've also have like I mean, it's getting back to like the reason we got on this track. It's getting away from like from a specific language of improvisation,
100%,
and being able to, but you can't just have nothing.
Right.
So
totally.
it's a way to it's a way to make another language
Totally. And now that we've been doing
slowly
it long
but surely.
enough,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and the
I mean,
fact
how
that
else do you do it, right? I mean,
you can't do it any other way. It's one step at a time.
Right. You can't just talk about it for 3 minutes and then go for it.
Yeah, and the thing, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like we have tons of these fiddle music recordings that just like don't have the thing, whatever the thing is, and that's I think the point of why I play music maybe is getting to that like what that back to that repeating thing. There's something in any tune that anyone wants to make or listen to that grabs you, and especially dealing with drone and the idea of people slipping into trances or like meditative states from it. You have to get the right one, and it's like a tree that fell in the woods, so you got to record a bunch of them and make sure you get the right one. So when people ask us if it's improvised, I say yeah, but like the tunings are set. Like each tour we go on, we set a different tuning, an open tuning. So he's in some other alternative. I'm usually just the straight fifths, cross, whatever. But it's turned into this thing that we've created our own language, and yes, we're improvising within it, but like there are motifs or there are patterns or there are some type of orchestration thinking that's going on all the time where we're familiar with this material, but we're going to change it, or we're going to do this, or we're going to, the key changes that happen are so rapid in a way that people think we don't really. Me and Henry are always like, oh man, it's so busy. We always do so much. And people just kind of hear like, and we're like, yeah, but like, and then you move to that. And then I like, brought that down a quarter step and, all these things that are moving like this.
Right.
If you're not zoomed in on that level, you're allowed to listen to it zoomed out. Right. It's okay. It functions close and far. So I don't really think about it as improvising. It's almost like it's like we're both like going down a really long slide. Where like me and Chris Cortella or something is really intense, jagged. It's like we're running around the yard. I always think about that with Chris. It's like I'm just trying to catch you. Where me and Henry.
Speaking of somebody that I've stolen a lot of things from.
Oh, we should all steal from Chris. Yeah. Big shout out, Chris Cortella.
Yeah,
check him out. Yeah, definitely best guitar, one of the best guitar players in America for sure. But yeah, so we were kind of surprised about the tongue depressor stuff, kind of even the language itself happening, right? Like no one goes into something being like, we're going to have a fully thought out system of playing music that doesn't exist. It's like,
except maybe Henry Flynn.
Except for Henry Flynn. He's the only one who thought beforehand. But it was like, and also like
possibly he wrote those essays before he did.
I wouldn't doubt it either. Yeah. Well, and I think the catch with how the whole project started was that we didn't know how to play fiddle. Like we were learning on stage together, touring, being like,
yes,
my hand is gonna like cramp up in 15 minutes because like I'm bad at doing this, So like I obviously have unfortunately the upper hand because I'm a string player. Henry is coming from guitar, but now plays lap steel.
You have some idea how to use the bow.
Totally, I teach kids. I have a bit, but still, it's like that's a really humbling thing, being like, I have a master's degree, whatever that means to anybody, in a really specific instrument, and I'm in Canada playing fiddle. Are you serious? Like, what? You know what I mean? It took me a while to be like, yeah, I play fiddle. Cool. You can't, it's like, I feel comfortable enough now that like I can do things on this instrument that other people not can't do, but don't really practice. Like tuning intervals like that. Like, I'm not the fastest fiddle player by any means, but now once you play these intervals enough, like there's no dots, there's no tapes, there's no, we can just like done.
Yes.
Flat 7 minus 33 cents, we got it. You know what I mean? It's like you can just get to that point and really the thing that taught me the most about tuning is playing with somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't really do in school. You practice in a room alone. You don't play scales together. You never, warm up really together. So it's kind of like both of us, I feel like my ears jumped like 15 levels in specificity, in the ratios or sense, whatever leanings that I wanted, solely because I was playing with somebody else.
Yes.
And I could, wow, that sounds great. I'm playing a fifth and you just bent whatever a little bit, and now we have this totally different thing. And we have like what we call the tongue depressor tuning Bible, and we write down all of our tunings and stuff. So it's we can go back and figure out playing new things with old tunings and kind of creating our own kind of history
Nice.
of it. I guess we've thought. I really want to make like etude books and stuff. You know, you know, if you want to learn how to play this stuff, you know,
Yeah,
I can.
yeah,
You know,
right.
it's like what write down like what you need to hear a certain interval because there are frequencies that come out that people aren't paying attention to.
Right.
Right. You know.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm getting off track.
I want to make sure people get to hear a little bit
Totally.
of what you're talking about. But before, so the last thing to ask is why drones?
I fell back into. I grew up listening to a lot of drone music from like bands like Sun,
Mm-hmm.
and electronic artists and like just minimal synth stuff. So it's always been there. And listening to punk music is obviously a drone. You always go back, right? But it wasn't until I started listening to music from different cultures. I'm really hooked on Vietnam, um, deep in Japan, shamisen, uh, that I kind of was like, everyone has a drone. It's the most fun Native American drum circle, shape note singing. Like you can go anywhere in the world, like Balkan music, you
Yeah.
know, Peruvian music. I've been hooked on these blind street musicians from Caucasus, mandolin and harp stuff. I mean, all that stuff is drum. If you just zoom out a little bit, like Shankarian analysis for all of our smart listeners, if you zoom out, you can make a Brahms symphony 2 notes, right? I mean,
Right.
that's kind of the same thing. So I started getting into like folk music, and then I started getting really into people like James Tenney and Alvin Lucier and all this stuff. So once I got out of school and I was still listening to that stuff, it was kind of like, I just want to play drums.
Yeah.
Kind of the only thing that's really exciting, you know, because the slower you go, the closer you get. And if you're talking about tuning specific frequencies, you got to go slower. And that's like the thing that me and Henry have not an issue with, but something that we want to do with Harry Parch's music is that we're going to try to do a variations record and slow down Parch riffs because his music goes so fast and there's all these intricate tunings, you can't really hear them.
Yeah.
So the slower
Right.
you go, people, you know, if anyone, everyone should listen to like people like Mark Sabat and other type of microtonal people that play really slow, gorgeous music. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It kind of was like the fundamental calling, not to be so like hippie about it, but it was like really like
Be hippie.
this is it. You know what I mean? It's like I keep going back to this if I'm playing with, you know, Yanko Dumitrescu or Paul Flaherty or Layla or Charmaine Lee or anybody that like I am attached to it. I can't get away from it. I put it in everything. When I'm making tape loop music, bass stuff, fiddle stuff, whatever, it's all coming back to sustain in some type of way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're hooked, then you just try to do it in every other kind of way. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not lying to people, but it's like, you know, you should expect me to drone kind of wherever. and it, you know, if I totally change my mind by the time I'm 40 or whatever, then this was a great phase. But I just have a feeling that I'm kind of not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm in for the long haul.
Yeah.
You know? Sorry.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, you've been listening to Northern Remedy here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, and I've been talking to Zach Rowden, musician and what did we decide on? Scene organizer.
Scene organizer. Yeah. And this is a track called For Shirley Hall by Tongue Depressor off of Fiddle Music Volume 4.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Brian.